I think everyone's here and we're now streaming live, so you could start the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Town Council, Northampton Town Council. We are having some technical issues, so please bear with us. Before we start on the agenda, we are holding this meeting under the sad news that over 100,000 people have sadly died as a result of the coronavirus, including, I know, several known and dear to many of us. Could you kindly join me in a few moments silence in their memory and for all those who mourn their loss? Thank you. Could you please ensure that your mobile phones are switched off? Councillors, when indicating that you want to speak on an agenda item, please can you use the blue hand facility in Zoom? Item 1, apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillors Kelly, King and M. Markham. Are there any more apologies?
There are none, no more, Councillor.
Thank you. Over to Richard.
Chair, yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to make a short announcement under apologies, please. I understand that Mr. Chunga has been disqualified as a member of the Borough Council by reason of absence from meetings for 6 months. And accordingly, he's no longer an appointed member of the Town Council. Therefore, a vacancy exists and that will remain existing until the ordinary elections for the Town Council, which are due on the 6th of May, I beg your pardon. Thank you.
Thank you for that information. We can move on. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting from 7th of December 2020. Can these be agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 3, declaration of interest. Do we have any declaration of interest?
Nobody appears to be indicating.
Thank you. We move on to item 4, the membership of an executive committee. I call upon Councillor Hallam.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to propose that Councillor Stephen Hibbert take the vacant spot on the executive committee.
Councillor Hill.
I'm happy to second, Chair, and I reserve the right to speak.
Right. Are there any other speakers?
Nobody's indicating.
Over to you, Councillor Hill.
Put that to the vote then, Chair, please.
Okay. I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Okay.
And against?
And against?
That's carried, Chair, but I'm afraid I can't see Councillor Terry Eales or Councillor Flavel.
I'm sorry, I've only just managed to get in.
Yes, good evening, Councillor. That's okay. I was just seeing if you were voting for the appointment of Councillor Hibbert to the committee.
Thank you. Yeah.
And Councillor Terry, can we get her vote? Has she indicated?
Sorry, I just had a bit of a nightmare go on and everything went a bit crazy here.
Okay.
I'm sorted now.
How do you vote? For or against?
For.
Thank you. Is that carried, Rob?
That's carried then, Chair.
Thank you. That is carried. I declare the motion to be carried. Item 5 is the appointment of a new town clerk. I call upon Councillor Birch.
Chair, before Councillor Birch comes in, I've just had a message from Councillor Stone, and I had difficulties. Now, I don't think some of the councillors, because there's quite a few missing, have actually got the pass details for this to get on this call. So could somebody get in touch with Councillor Stone to give her the information, please?
Tracy, can you get Maisie to contact her?
Maisie,
Okay,
Maisie, can you hear me? Are we making contact with Councillor Stone, please?
Yes, we've emailed Councillor Stone and we've just, Tracy's just got off the phone to Councillor Stone.
Okay,
so she should be with us shortly. Thank you.
Okay. Right, item 5, the appointment of a new town clerk. I call upon Councillor Birch.
Yes, right. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm very pleased to move the recommendations of the appointments panel on page 5 and 6 of the agenda that Marion Goodman can be appointed town clerk to the town council with effect from the 1st of April 2021. There is a small error on the first line of recommendation 1, which I need to correct. Marion, of course, is the interim assistant chief executive and not the acting chief executive. However, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Marion and congratulate her. It was a very challenging post and attracted a huge amount of interest from many people. The role of first town clerk for the largest town council in the country. The interviews are held over a 2-day period, and there was rigorous interviews, very, very testing, and the decision to appoint Marion was unanimous. I'm absolutely delighted that she has agreed, she has accepted, and we look forward to working with her to develop all the ambitions and the opportunities we have with this new town council. So welcome, Marion, and congratulations. Thank you.
Councillor Marriott?
Yeah, pleased to second, Chair. I can't add much further than what Councillor Birch has already said. I was sitting on the interview panel as well. But just to say, you know, we've received the actual credentials from referees, and they're excellent, exceptional. So I think we've made a very good appointment.
Welcome. I have Councillor Meredith and Councillor Hallam who has indicated to speak. Councillor Meredith.
Councillor Meredith is not in the meeting at the moment, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Hallam.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take this. I would say that I've had a text from Councillor Lane as well that I think he was in the meeting and has now been kicked out as well. So there does seem to be some technical issues that Maisie and Tracy perhaps should be aware of. Just on Marion's appointment, this is an excellent appointment. I think all of us, regardless of party politics, have worked with Marion now for a number of years, know her to be a really diligent officer. I wasn't on the panel myself, but I'm not surprised at all that the decision was completely unanimous. I look forward to working, we all look forward to working with Marion in this new role moving forward and the challenges and opportunities that brings.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers?
Nobody's indicating, Chair.
Thank you. I now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands.
That's carried, Chair.
Thank you. On behalf of everyone of the Town Council, I would like to congratulate Marion on her appointment and wish her every success in her new role as the first Town Clerk and of the new Town Council. I am pleased that Marion is with us this evening and perhaps she might like to say a few words. Marion.
Very much, Chair. Thank you very much indeed, everyone, for your very kind words. It has been an honour and a privilege to serve as an officer for the Borough Council, and I'm very appreciative of this opportunity to continue to serve councillors and the people of Northampton as Town Clerk. I'm really looking forward to building effective relationships with all the other town and parish councils within our communities and businesses. and really looking forward to helping you deliver the exciting aspirations for the town. And I can't wait to get started. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. Item 6.
Chair, excuse me,
Yes.
before you proceed, I just wonder, as we do have some councillors have indicated they're trying to come into the meeting before we take substantive decisions that are just coming up, whether colleagues from Democratic Services may be able to advise us. Councillor Stone was trying to come in. Councillor Lane is here, but I can't see him to be able to participate fully. And I haven't seen Councillor Meredith or Brian Markham. Is it possible those councillors could be contacted, please?
We've had quite a lot of conversations with Councillor Stone. She is trying to get in. We have tried to contact Councillor Meredith. We haven't been able to get hold of him, and we will try to get hold of the other Councillor Markham as well.
Councillor Lane.
Yeah, I'm here, but having my camera on freezes everybody, and then I get booted out for some reason this evening. So if I'm mad, I'd rather have my camera off to save me being booted out.
Okay. I've been kicked out a couple of times already, so I know there's technical issues here. Yeah.
Well, Chair, as we're coming to taking some substantive decisions, if it assists, we will take because of the problems, a recorded vote on both the substantive recommendations before the council, so that even if members are not on screen but are still present, we'll be able to record their votes.
Yes, of course. Shall I carry on?
Yes, please do, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we move on to the reports of the Executive Committee. Item 6 is the reports of the Executive Committee. I call upon Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chair. I move that Council receives the reports and recommendations of the Executive Committee meetings held on the 5th of January and the 19th of January, and the report of the Acting Town Clerk, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted. Thank you.
Councillor Marriott.
Pleased to second, Chair, and I'll reserve my right to speak in case I'm needed further on any discussion.
Okay. I propose to invite the Council to consider each of these 2 sets of minutes in turn. Are there any speakers to the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of January on pages 7 to 10? No. Okay. We now come to the second meeting on 19th of January, which includes 2 recommendations on which the council must take a vote. First is the recommendations at minute 4, transfer of property and services. Are there any speakers to the recommendations? Can't see any hands raised.
No one is indicating, Chair.
Before taking a vote, I invite Councillor Birch if she wishes to exercise her mover's right of reply.
Well, as there are no comments, Chair, I don't think there's a need for a right to reply. We can proceed to the vote if you would perhaps explain the vote that's to be taken.
Okay. Shall I just go on to the next chapter?
Now put the motion to the vote, please.
Okay. I'll put the motion to the vote. How do...
Which is, and you're going to read the recommendation, Chair.
Oh, right. Shall I read that first?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I am really sorry, colleagues. I had real trouble joining the meeting. Could somebody just quickly catch me up to where we are?
And the same with me as well.
Chair, do you want to let them know where we are?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. I'm sorry to hear you've had difficulties. We have just adopted the recommendation of the appointments panel, and Marion Goodman is now the Town Clerk of Northampton Town Council, and she has said some nice words, and the Chair has congratulated her. We have started the consideration of the minutes of the reports of the 2 meetings of the Executive Committee. There have been no comments raised on the first meeting, and we're now dealing with the second meeting and the substantive recommendation at the top of page 13, which the chair was about to read out and put to the vote. There had been no speakers to the motion relating to transfer of properties.
Right.
Chairman, having said that, perhaps you would care now to read out the recommendation on which councillors will vote.
Okay. I now put the motion to the vote, which is number 1, to agree in principle, subject to the concurrence of the Shadow West Northants Council, to the transfer on 1st of April of those properties and services set out in paragraph B of the report of the acting town clerk, including on long lease of the historic part of the Guildhall, and subject to the approval of the draft budget for 2021 and 22, further reports on the financial and staffing implications of those transfers be presented to the Executive Committee. Number 2, to explore with the Shadow West Northants Council a possible funded transfer of the further services set out in paragraph C of the report on 1st of April 2021. And 3, that in the event of the Borough Council / West Northants Council agree to the transfer of property and services outlined above, that is not proving possible to conclude the formalities of any of those transfers by 1st of April 2021. The Town Council be authorised to conclude a service level agreement to enable those services to be continued to be delivered under existing arrangements until such time in 2021 when the formalities of transfer can be completed. So all those in favour, please raise your hands.
I thought we were doing recorded votes.
Yes, I was just going to indicate there would be a recorded vote, Councillor.
Okay.
I'll read out the names of the councillors, and if you could kindly indicate if you are in favour of the recommendation the chair has just read out, or against it, or you wish to abstain. Councillor Ashraf.
For.
Councillor Ansell.
For.
Councillor Birch.
For.
Councillor Duffy.
For.
Councillor Gareth Eales.
For.
Councillor Terry Eales.
For.
Councillor Flavel. Councillor Flavel was in the meeting. Councillor Flavel, you're muted.
I'm so sorry, I was muted. Yes, I'm in favour, thank you.
Councillor Hallam.
For, sorry, I was muted too. For.
Councillor Hack.
For.
Councillor Hibbert.
For.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Joyce.
For.
Councillor Lane.
For.
Councillor Brian Markham.
For.
Councillor Marriott.
For.
Councillor Meredith. Is Councillor Meredith in the meeting yet?
No, he's not in the meeting.
Councillor McCutcheon.
For.
Councillor Russell.
Oh.
Sorry, Councillor Russell, I didn't hear you.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
For.
And Councillor Stone.
For.
Thank you, Chair. That's carried by all the members present.
Thank you. We now come to the recommendations at minute 5 on pages 13 and 14. This also includes the draft budget in the appendix on page 15 and the supplemental report of the acting town clerk emailed separately to councillors. Are there any speakers to the motion?
Councillor Hallam is indicating, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Hallam.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to just spend a couple of minutes going through what I think is good in the budget and what I don't think is as good, and perhaps explain the reason why I'm not in a position to support the budget tonight. The other thing I would say is these are my views, and Conservative colleagues may agree with them, they may disagree with them, and that's totally up to them how they seek to express their view and vote. In terms of what's good in the budget, one of the principal things that I thought was one of the principal objectives of this council originally was to retain the mayoralty. So what I really think is positive is that the mayoral budget is set to remain at the same spot as it is at the moment. And I think that's really important, because I don't think you can save the mayoralty and then actually start to try and do it on the cheap. So I think it's really important that we give that office a level of financial resources befitting of an office that's some 800 years old. So I think that's really important. Secondly, I like the elements of the Council Community Fund and the community grant schemes that the Town Council is proposing. The Borough Council's had loads and loads of positive feedback on its two similar schemes from local people. So if we get such positive feedback from local people on schemes, why wouldn't we try and extend that or offer that scheme ourselves as a Town Council? So I think that's really good and important. The where this falls down for me, and I will go through it, is in terms of the amount of money that's allocated either for reserves, for continuation of services, or for services that West Northampton Council have agreed to fund in year one. Now, if you total those three items together, you get to over £800,000. And for me, that's just too big a number. I accept and recognise that we need a level of reserve and we need a level of continuation of services, a budget for continuation of services. But for me, nearly 50% of the entire budget is just too much of a gap to stomach. And the reason for that is that I would have to go to the people I represent and tell them that what we're going to do is potentially charge them this extra £800,000, this pot of £800,000, put it into a bank account and potentially not use it over the coming year. And for me, that's just a bridge that's too much to cross. And you might say, well, Mike, employment levels in your area are good and people have got jobs and things are quite good. And unfortunately, I'm here to tell you that that's not the case. So if you think about an area like the one that I represent, an awful lot of people at the moment are actually furloughed. So if you take somebody that perhaps works in the hospitality industry, or maybe even works in the supply chain for the hospitality industry, those people, whilst they are employed at the moment, they're actually only earning 80% of their normal wage, and they're struggling. So I just can't reconcile that myself as to how we would put that money into a bank account rather than leaving it in the resident's bank account if we're not potentially going to use it. I do accept that we need a reserve, and I do accept that we need a level of continuation of services, but for me that move to 800,000 is too high, and that percentage of the total budget needs to come down significantly before I'd be in a position to support it. That being said, my thanks to the officers that have worked all this out. I myself won't be voting for the budget tonight. I'll be voting against. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hallam. I can see Councillor Hill, Gareth Eales and Mr Markham. Can I take Councillor Hill?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I echo a lot of the points which my colleague just spoke about in terms of the budget. There's some really good stuff in there, especially regarding the community stuff and the morality. One of my biggest issues with this budget, however, is the inclusion of council allowances, something which I don't believe really should be in place for parish council / town council levels. I understand the need to have to be able to give people from all backgrounds a chance to stand, but I think this can be done in a different way rather than a blanket allowance, which potentially could be increased in the future, and also adds obviously the cost to the budget of £26,000. So that's my issue with the budget, and that's why I won't be able to support it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eales.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few issues with what's proposed, but I'm only going to focus on two areas. The first is towards the bottom of the appendix. There's two columns: events, entertainments, £104,000 with an asterisk, and festive lights, Christmas, etc., £145,000 also with an asterisk. And the document goes on to say that these may not be spent on those particular areas because obviously it's subject to what I'm given to understand is ongoing negotiations with West Northampton Unitary. That's really to fund the nice things, the things like the Christmas lights, the firework displays, and stuff that people have become to expect and they enjoy. I have an issue with budgeting for anything that's not actually confirmed, because one or two things are going to happen. Either the unitary won't fund those things, although Councillor Hallam's contribution seems to suggest they might. But let's say the unitary does agree to fund them. We would have falsely budgeted for a significant expenditure. And I know what the answer to that's going to be. Oh, well, it will just go into reserves, councillors, but that's not what we're budgeting for. The whole purpose of these kind of meetings is that we have the detail, it's drilled down, and we vote on it based on facts, which brings me on to the other issue, which Councillor Hill was just referenced in terms of mayoral and member allowances. My personal opinion is I don't believe members on their parish or town council should get an allowance either. But you know what? It doesn't matter what I think, because what would normally happen in these circumstances is there'd be an independent remuneration panel that would make a determination, which we would then consider. We would be the only politicians in this country that will predetermine and set our own allowances, and that ain't right. I don't care which party you sit in, that is just simply not right. What this is a failure, not from officers who've worked their butts off, it's a failure to follow directions given by NCALC. In September, the cross-party working group was told to set up an independent remuneration panel for this very purpose urgently. I quote, urgently. As we sit here, it's still not set up. So I don't see how we could conceivably pass through any allowances that have not been through that kind of scrutiny process. And you can't do it belatedly, because let's say that the independent panel says it should be half, it should be £500 a year, or God forbid, they say it should be double that. We would have either over budgeted or under budgeted. And I'm not prepared to do that with taxpayers' money, which brings me on to the mayoral allowance. I've got an affinity and an affection for the mayoralty, as you'd expect being a former mayor, but it doesn't matter whether I think the allowance should be the same it is on the borough. Again, there should be an independent process for someone else to determine that, not us. We can't be setting our own allowances. And it's for those reasons I cannot support this tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. Councillor Markham.
Thank you, Chair. I share some of the concerns expressed by previous speakers, but I will be supporting the draft budget. I remember one of the first council meetings I ever went to when they were discussing the budget and I talked to officers beforehand about it, and the whole point about budget, we're setting a precept essentially. We know it's the first year of this new town council. To be quite honest, a lot of those figures there are provisional, might be subject to change, but whenever a council sets a budget, essentially it sets a council tax, it sets an overall figure, and 2 days later something will change, and something's changing very quick. Lots of things are changing very quickly. Who'd have thought all the money that local government would have had to fund for COVID during the last year? So budgets do change as we go through the year. What I'm concerned about is that during its first year, it has funds to cope with those things that may come its way. And take, for instance, events. And so we may get the money from West Northampton. What we don't know for West Northampton, for instance, very important to me, is the Remembrance Sunday parade and the event around that. Now, that money has to be found for that. Christmas lights, again, to what level will West Northampton fund the Christmas lights? There are many ifs and buts and maybes in this budget, but to those of us who've been on the executive and discussed it, we've gone through many of those things many times, and we've sought clarification. We had another email a couple of days ago explaining more detail. Yes, there are questions, but just go specifically to the councillor allowance. My understanding, and I may be often wrong, that this is still, we're putting £1,000 in the budget. It is subject to the independent review panel reporting sometime in the future, but we put something in the budget. And of course, the £1,000 is there, not because every single councillor has to claim it, but because some councillors may need that cost of childcare, cost of getting to meetings, and so on. And I'd rather see all the councillors turning up for the planning subcommittee than not being there because they're not being able to afford childcare or internet provision or whatever. So it is very much a draft budget. The £1,000, looking overall at the total, £25,000 for councillor expenses is nothing in 1.8 million. And finally, I'll just say nearly all of this 1.8 million, of course, has already been covered by somebody else in the past. This is money that is already being spent, by and large, by other people. And now the town council's got to raise that money and spend most of it. So I don't agree with the setting up the town council. I didn't agree with the new unitary status, but we have to set a budget. We have to set a budget that works.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stone.
Thank you very much. Really interesting listening to everybody. Thank you. And I can tell everybody's put a lot of thought into how they are thinking and how they're feeling. And so have I. I think it's really, really important for the town that we've got a town council. I think we're in a really, really difficult position. I'm the ward councillor for one of the most disadvantaged areas in the town. Lots of people on this call represent very disadvantaged communities. I have spent all day, in fact, I've got a real bad headache. I've spent all day taking food parcels around to people and supporting a new setup for another African food bank. It is horrendous what's going on in our communities. Our town council, it seems to me, is much better placed to bring comfort to a lot of our communities and our households than the West Northampton unitary is. So I'm really, really pleased we've got a town council. This wasn't our choice. We wanted a unitary in Northampton, but we have got to make the best fist of a town council that we possibly can, because the people in our communities are going to need us really, really badly. They're hurting. What will they need from us? They will need events and entertainment. You know, if you're poor, you can't afford those kind of things. You cannot take your children to the cinema. It's okay if you can take them to the market, to the food festival, to the fireworks, to the Christmas lights, to whatever. Those things are really important. They're really important to help us maintain a sense of place and a sense of the town. But our communities are going to need a lot more than that. They're going to need a lot more than that. We are going to have to work really hard to build up our voluntary sector, to help new voluntary organisations come into existence, to help meet the need that there is in our communities. Youth services are one very, very good example, but I'm terrified now about what's happening with children and the impact that's having on the mental health of their parents. And I think, you know, I'm really pleased we're going to do a community needs analysis, because we want the community to tell us what they want from their town council. I'm very, very passionate about all of that. To be very honest with you, I don't think there's enough money in the town council. I would like to see more. And I would like us to be prudent and reflective, but ambitious for the town. And I'm very, very mindful of the advice we were given by the people who came to talk to us from other town councils. What did they say? They said, be honest with the public, be responsive to the public. Do not set yourself up to fail with too small a budget. Make sure that in year 2, you don't have to have a huge hike in the tax precept. If you do that, that means you got it wrong in the first year. So I'm totally in favour of this budget. I wish it was more. I think councillor allowances, for me, I'm very passionate about that. It's Labour Party policy, actually, nationally, that we remunerate councillors so that we have a level playing field. We don't disadvantage even further the people who are the most disadvantaged in our community. If you are unemployed or on 0-hour contracts, or you've got caring responsibilities, you can't pay for your internet, you haven't got a laptop, whatever, it excludes you from public life. We cannot allow that to happen in all conscience. And £1,000 remuneration to help people meet all those needs is a very small amount of money.
Thank you for your contribution. Councillor Birch and then Councillor Marriott, please.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, everybody, for your contributions. And
sorry,
again,
Councillor Birch, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You moved the original motion, so you'll be summing up at the end. I think there are other councillors who wish to speak. If you speak, you'll be closing the debate now.
We've got Councillor Marriott and then we'll take Councillor Birch. Councillor Marriott.
Thank you, Chair. I thought I got away with that then. I thought, great, the debate's over. I'd just like to come in, and I think Councillor Markham touched on the issue to do with budgets. And I think people have got to recognise this is a contingency budget. You know, it's in draft at the moment, but it's contingency. So most of these things on here is actually just put in place. And a contingent means just in case budget. And I'm a little bit surprised, particularly with Councillor Hallam and also Councillor Hill talking about this issue, because they've actually set budgets as part of the cabinet, you know, on the Borough Council over many years. Last year was different, but what you find throughout the year, and Councillor Markham touched on this, things do change. And usually inbuilt to most budgets, at whatever level of local authorities, is a just-in-case element. And we've seen that time and again on the borough. And I'll say, the reason why I mentioned we've got portfolio holders here tonight for the borough is because at the end of the year, we never spend up to that budget. And you'll see it's carried over. Not a bad thing. There are things that are carried over because that then supports the following years. In our case, in this year, it'll be the precept to the following year. And the actual, otherwise it would have been normal council tax. So it does support that. When I hear comments about the £800,000, roughly £800,000, it probably won't be spent. Well, I think you only have to look back at the minutes we agreed unanimously, and I think you'll find it's on something like page 9. There is a list already, a small list that was actually put forward of issues that people want to support. Now, that's not all encompassed in this budget. This budget has obviously been made up of what officers have actually looked at and felt the experience of when you're setting up a town council, what you need. But if you look on page 9 of what you've already agreed of the agenda, a string there, a number of them that obviously other councillors have put forward. We haven't gone out to the community yet to see what they want. And this year you can actually start putting some of these other things in place. For example, you know, down there, we've got about talking in terms of other things to do with the market. There's lots of things there. We haven't even got the closed churchyards down as part of the budget. So that £800,000, if people want to, can actually make sure that's allocated, if not this year, then flowing into next year for those issues. So that's one thing I'd really like to say. It's a real sort of issue that when you actually do set up an organisation, we haven't got a base to set to. We've got no money whatsoever when you think of the town council being set up. I just say, you know, it's something that we've got to think carefully on. It's something that we don't want this organisation to fail, fall at the first hurdle. I do accept some particular Councillor Iltis comments about some elements within this that we need to look at very closely. But that's an ongoing process because this is just contingency and those contingencies can be used elsewhere. So, yeah, I'm fully supportive of it to make sure that we set it up with quite a firm base and make sure that the town council goes forward with quite a bit of strength. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I've got Councillor McCutcheon and then we'll move on. Councillor McCutcheon.
Thank you. A number of important points have been made. There's one that I would like to comment on, and that is the idea that we should be setting our own expenses, as it were. I'm so old that I can remember a time when councillors did set their own expenses. And one of the characteristic things about us at that time was that we set them too low. And when we had an independent authority came in to make an assessment of what the expenses should be, it inevitably put them up. And that means that when I joined councils all those years ago, it was only the well-to-do that could afford to be councillors. And if we're having a town council which is making very important decisions at this level, we want to be able to access all the talent within our communities and to be able to give them the expenses to do the job properly. There are many other important points. Perhaps the most important of them is that all of these things that we're voting for now are already being spent for some other way. We know they're things that we need and want, and so we can budget wherever we happen to put it. And if it happens to end up this year temporarily in a contingency budget, so be it. It won't next year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for everyone's contribution.
I think Chair Councillor Hibbert was indicating.
Okay, Councillor Hibbert.
I think
you're muted, Councillor Hibbert. Councillor Hibbert, you're muted.
In the circumstances, I'm happy to let the debate carry on, Chair. I've struggled with the some of the signals on this, so
okay,
leave it as it is.
Thank you. Before taking a vote, I invite Councillor Burt, if she wishes to exercise her mover's right of reply. Councillor Burt.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've had a number of very, very differing points put forward tonight. And this is inevitable, isn't it? We're starting something new. We're starting something that is, we don't know the consequences of the decisions that have been made so far with the local government reorganisation, structural changes order. You know, everything is unknown at the moment. And we're living in incredibly unknown times. We don't know what's going to happen in the next year. Already people have mentioned unemployment, 0-hour contracts, people on furlough. There's a huge, huge problem with mental health, with education, with poverty as people come out of COVID, as we come out of lockdown. Those pressures on us are, again, completely unknown at the moment. So to be able to set a budget to deal with our town, with our residents, with our communities in the next year is almost impossible. And we have got some figures here. They've been put forward by the Borough Council. These are Borough Council figures put forward by Borough Council officers. They're not exact because we don't know what proportion of those figures apply to the town council. You know, we don't know what the projection is. We don't know what the demand is in the future. This is a contingency budget. As many people have said, it is, we don't have, and the officers cannot supply us with exact figures. We are making a budget that is there for all eventualities. One of the most important things that Marion Goodman has when she takes up her post is a community needs analysis. We're going to go out to the communities, to the residents, and find out what it is they want from their town council. If we have nothing to offer them, if there's nothing in our budget for them, for us to respond to them, to set up small groups, to provide some sort of support or entertainment or festivals or celebrations of some kind, if there's nothing there for us to offer them in response to this community needs assessment, we are going to fail them. Now, there's a huge problem about precepts, budgets, how much we're going to ask people to pay. The precept in the budget has been built around a Band D property. Now, what we're asking for is £48.75 per year for that Band D property. Now, only 10% of our residents within the town council area will be paying that or more. 90% of our residents would be in Band A, B or C, and a Band A property would be paying £32.52 per year. That is 62 pence a week. It is incredibly, well, it is significantly smaller than many of our surrounding parishes at the moment. People have said when we first went out to consultation on this, that they wanted their money spent well. One thing I can assure you is that this town council and the councillors that are elected in May will spend this money well. We'll make sure there is value in it, and they'll make sure that the residents get some of the things that they have asked for in every part of the town council, not just the town centre. We don't want flowers, we don't bloom flowers just in the town centre. They need to go out to Parklands, they need to go out to Eastfield, they need to go out to Standon's Barn, they need to go out all over the town so that every resident sees the effects of the precept that they're paying. I'd like to just reiterate about the allowances. These are not set by us. There is something in the budget if they are needed. The independent remuneration body will recommend an allowance, and we don't have to accept it. We could, they could recommend anything. As we mentioned, they could recommend any level of allowance, but we don't need to accept that. And if a councillor feels they don't need that allowance, they don't need to take it. So we don't want to exclude people who have, who have difficulty in paying for childcare if they want to come to meetings, who have difficulty with paying for broadband to allow this kind of meeting to go ahead. People will need laptops, phones, broadband, that sort of thing, IT equipment to do the councillor's job. And town and parish councillors don't get expenses. So there's no way of claiming back any of this expense. So the allowance will cover, if people need it, those kind of items that will enable councillors to do their job. So we don't want this to fail. We don't want to be short of money when people come back to us after our community needs analysis and said we would like to do A, B, or C. We don't want to let people down, and we don't know the sort of demands and challenges that are going to face our residents and our communities in the coming year. And the thing that we most of all don't want to do is to put a great big hike on next year's precept, which I think is being disingenuous at this point, and it is leading people astray. Allowing them to come to terms with the precept and the budget for this year, and then say, actually, next year we are going to need double that. So don't let's be in that position that we're having to ask people so much more in a year's time. I think that is being, that's not being fair with them. And I think we have to be honest and open and transparent, give people value for money, and make sure if they are paying this precept, and we do have this budget to work with, they can see what we're doing. We are accountable, transparent, and they can challenge us on any of these items and the delivery of this for them. So I ask you, please, can I move to approve the motion, and can I ask you, please, to support the this motion?
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Thank you. I now put the motion to the vote, which is to approve the draft budget in the sum of 1.775.500 as set out in the appendix to these minutes, and to agree a precept on West Northamptonshire Council for 2021-22 in that sum. 2, that a matter of priority which are transferred to enable the council to transfer any possible modifications and enhancements to these services. 3, that's appropriate finally adopted budget. Sorry, the town authorised to recruit and appoint port staff due to 1st of April 2021, administration officer full-time and administration assistant part-time, finance officer part-time, and 4, finally, that no expenditure be committed on the items in the budget marked with an asterisk until the relevant committee has approved full details of how these contingency sums will be expended. And I pass you over to Richard for recorded vote.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, if councillors could kindly indicate if they're for or against the motion or they wish to abstain. Councillor Ashraf.
For.
Councillor Ansell.
Against.
Councillor Birch.
For.
Councillor Duffy.
For.
Councillor Gareth Eales.
Against.
Councillor Terry Eales.
Against.
Councillor Flavel. Councillor Flavel.
I was muted. Against. I'm sorry.
Councillor Hallam.
Against.
Councillor Hack. Councillor Hack.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hibbert.
Against.
Councillor Hill.
Against.
Councillor Joyce.
Against.
Councillor Lane.
For.
Councillor Markham.
For.
Councillor Marriott.
For.
Councillor McCutcheon. Councillor McCutcheon. Can't see Councillor McCutcheon.
He's muted.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Russell.
For.
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 Thank you. Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Stone.
For.
Tracy, can you assist me by confirming those numbers?
I can, Richard. I have 11 for and 8 against.
That means the motion is carried 11-8.
Thank you. We now come to the substantive.
Would you like to declare that it's moved? That's been carried, Chair.
Okay, thank you. That's been moved. We now come to the substantive vote that the reports of the Executive Committee be received and the recommendations therein be adopted. All those in favour, please raise your hands.
And against, Chair.
And against?
That is carried, Chair.
Thank you. I declare the motion to be carried. Future meetings. Item 7 is to approve the dates of future meetings. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to propose that the date for the next meeting will be Monday, the 1st of March, 2021 at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marriott.
Second that.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers?
Nobody's indicating, Chair.
Okay. I now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands.
That's carried, Chair.
I declare the motion to be carried. As there are no further business, I declare this meeting closed. Thank you all.